Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about Spider Man, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 4, chronologically, anyway. This one's Return of the Spider Slayers. It premiered on February 11th in 1995. It actually aired third in line, but if you're watching it in the recommended Season 1 chronological order, it is fourth in line. I would see this one for the first time when it premiered, and there were a lot of visual goings on in this episode. Yeah, I'm going to use the word see. Deal with it. I had no idea that the Spider Slayers could combine into one big honkin' Tri Slayer, according to the toy. Speaking of toys, yeah, the Spider Slayers were very toyetic, as a kid points out in this episode. Well, the kid really wanted one, and so did I. I loved giant robots as a kid. I don't know if I would have gotten along with Alistair Smythe very well, but I do like his style in cool looking robots. But Smythe, he is understandably stricken with grief, and he is out to unalive. I have to use that word because YouTube doesn't like the other one. He's out to unalive everyone he feels that were involved in his father's disappearance. Well, he feels that Spencer is unalived. And speaking of which, I like how many aces the Kingpin already has up his sleeve. If you've seen season 3 of Spider-Man, spoilers if you haven't, go watch it. It's quite an old show. I'm surprised if you haven't seen the episode. But yeah, if you've seen The Ultimate Slayer in season 3, I mean, yeah, Wilson has so many aces up his sleeve, as we'll see when we get there. I like how he's already got Smythe working for him, and Smythe has rebuilt the Black Widow. Smythe doesn't care who he's got to go after. He just wants everybody to pay. Everyone he's associated with his father's disappearance. Not just Spider-Man, but he's going after Flash Thompson for some reason. He's going after Eddie Brock. He's going after J. Jonah Jameson. So, oh yeah, and he's also going after Norman Osborn. And some of them I understand, but part of me is like, JJ's a jerk and all, but what did he do? He was just, owning a newspaper. He ran a charity ball, dude. Your robot broke into his house and trashed everything. As Jameson said, he needs to blame himself in that case anyway. But yeah, Smythe is grieving. He sent the Black Widow after Peter. Peter's already having to say yes to the blind date. If you're watching this as the fourth episode in line, he's got no more excuses. So he's got to say yes to the blind date with Mary Jane. I see nothing wrong with blind dates. Hardy har har, by the way. So he's dreading it throughout the entire episode, I think. But I like how Peter gets captured because he is attempting to save lives. Not only does he have to deal with the Black Widow, the Tarantula, the second Spider Slayer, and yes, it is bigger. The toy was a lot bigger than the Black Widow toy. I did finally get the Spider Slayers as toys. I'd like to go into that at the end of the video. But yeah, that showed up. He's trying to save a mom, I think it's a little girl, and their dog. So that's how he gets captured and whisked away to wherever Smythe is. I wonder where that location is. I don't know if it's the toy store we eventually see in season 5, because we do know that Kingpin has a kind of dummy corporation set up in a toy store. It's probably not that location at all. Spider-Man has no idea where he is, though. I mean, he doesn't even know that Kingpin is behind all this in this episode. But I always wondered where Smythe was. Probably some no-name lab. I don't think it's connected with Kingpin's Crime Central there. Pause video recording. Stop. Pause video recording, please. Now Smythe attaches a bomb to Spider-Man, calls Jameson to show up, says he has an exclusive story for him, and he just gasses Spider-Man for a second time, Jameson the first, and transports them away, I guess to wait an hour until they blow up together. And Smythe is fine with that. I probably would have kept them there. But I mean, Smythe is Smythe and he's not really thinking all that clearly. Or better yet, fire a missile at him with one of the Spider Slayers. Drench them with acid to make sure that they're good and and unalived, but he just transports them away, which, I mean, I like the unwilling Jameson. He's got to work with Spider-Man for a few minutes, but I enjoyed these two polar opposites having to, be handcuffed together for at least a few minutes until Spider-Man does the selfless thing and he frees Jameson. He's still got the bomb attached to his arm for the entirety of the episode. So he's got to figure out how to disarm the thing, and he's also got to save pretty much everyone who has been out to get him, because now, Eddie's targeted, so poor Eddie's not having a good day. He tries to get hired at, another news publisher, but this guy just fires him right away. I thought that was pretty funny the first time I watched it, because he gets the job. I think it's the tarantula shows up there, and his office is wrecked, and this guy automatically blames Eddie. And Eddie was just like, well, what did I do? I just work here. And the guy's like, you're fired. Poor Eddie. But I mean, if he hadn't have tried to expose Kurt Connors, if he wasn't thinking of himself, he probably would have still been working with Jameson. But, now Eddie's out of a second job, and this is another bit of fuel to add to that fire inside of him, that hatred for Spider-Man, because, even though Spider-Man was saving his life here, he looks after him as, Spidey is swinging away, and he's like, I'll get even with you if it's the last thing I do. So I wish I'd known who Eddie was, but like I said, not having read the comics, not being able to, I thought he was just kind of there for maybe a bit of comic relief. I didn't know the next time we would be seeing him would be such an epic, such a memorable three-parter. Yeah, Eddie is out of a job. Spider-Man's got to save Flash Thompson. And I think it might be the Scorpion Spider Slayer that gets sent after Norman to Oscorp. And Smythe is really not thinking clearly, because Kingpin pretty much owns Oscorp now. So he sent the Scorpion after someone, one of the Kingpin's underlings pretty much. So you've got some of Fisk's assets that are in jeopardy. I think Oscorp pretty much gets demolished in this episode because of Smythe's lust for revenge. So I'm wondering if Kingpin had a couple of words with him off screen about that, because I mean, Smythe is of course not really, maybe Smythe's not aware that Kingpin is in control of Oscorp at this point in the show. He's just out for vengeance. I love these Spider Slayers, though. I like how Norman decides to handle things, because JJ being JJ, he's calling everybody, and he's attempting to let everyone know, hey, you're in danger, you're in danger, you're in danger. Norman's like, all right, JJ, don't worry about it. I'll handle it. And he dials a couple of numbers. And he's like, get me security, and they'll handle it. Well, he doesn't say that last part, but I mean, yeah, that's all Norman does. He just kind of leaves it up to the robot tanks and the helidrones. But the big final battle at the end of the episode must have been something, because you have all three Spider Slayers. They combine into one. It was pretty easy to put them together as toys. They just kind of stacked up on top of each other. The Scorpion was on the bottom, the Tarantula was in the middle, and the Black Widow perched on top of the other two. And I got mine for practically nothing at a Toys R Us in 1996, I remember. I don't have them anymore, but the Tarantula could fire missiles from its head. The Scorpion had a missile in its tail. You could fill up Black Widow with water, pretending that it was acid. I never did that, but the rubber on the underbelly of the Black Widow there, it wasn't built to last. I think when I got it out of the box, it was already cracked open for some reason. I never really used it for that, so I mean, it was still pretty cool to have. All of their legs could capture action figures, and it was just a really cool looking toy. And we'll get into the toyetic wing bomber when we get to the Hobgoblin two-parter later on. I also love that thing. Yeah, you know how the episode ends. Spider-Man disarms the bomb. He uses it to destroy the Spider Slayers, and now, Smythe is entangled in the web of the Kingpin, as it were. He's got to work for Fisk until he destroys Spider-Man. And Smythe is, in a prison of his own making. He made a deal with the devil, and now he is stuck in that lab. I would guess isolated. He's not really able to have contact with anyone, just with Fisk and whoever Fisk decides to have him assist with his robotic designs and all that stuff. And I like how how things end with Peter. He's got to go back home, and he has to go out on the blind date with Mary Jane Watson. So we are introduced to her. Mary Jane is voiced by Saratoga Ballantine at the very end of the episode when she shows up and says, "Face it, Tiger, you've just hit the jackpot." I like the sultry, I think it's clarinet music that they play at the end of the episode. It sounds like a clarinet anyway. I was in band for quite a number of years back in the day, so I think I know my woodwinds. That's how the episode ends, and I can imagine this dumbfounded look on Peter's face as we fade to black there as he's about to go on his blind date. And so, I mean, he's had a rough day. He saved folks. He's battered. He's bruised, as he says. He's got to do his own sewing because his costume got torn. But at least he gets to go out on a date, and it's not a total loss for him at the end of the episode. So next time we're going to be talking about the menace of Mysterio, and there's a bit of dialogue in that episode that lets me know that it takes place right after their blind date. That's how they would air it in reruns anyway. You would get the Spider Slayer 2-parter, and then Fox Kids would air Menace of Mysterio right after. That's how it showed up on my VHS tapes when I would tape them back in the day, before streaming was ever a thing. I liked seeing Norman Osborn just being Norman for quite a while before he does eventually become, very big spoilers, pause the video and go watch the rest of the show. Before he does become the Green Goblin, he's just, working at Oscorp, and he has to depend on different weapons and security measures that he's taken in order to get himself out of situations. But he's still a very powerful businessman in New York, and I like that he is actually under the Kingpin's thumb for just a little bit. It's not necessarily going to work out the way Fisk thinks it is, because I think Fisk has already, made a very powerful enemy. Norman may be a businessman, but he's very crafty, and I like that he's not going to take this lying down, as it were, having to basically be owned by Fisk for a while, as we'll see when we get to the Hobgoblin 2-parter. And I think when it comes to Smythe not really thinking clearly and just going after everybody, it does make a lot of sense to me, because, we never know how we're going to react when we grieve, and he's just lashing out at everybody. He misses his father. Yeah, never mind the fact that Spencer was going to murder Spider-Man in order to build Smythe's hover chair. He still had a really close relationship with his dad, and in this episode, I think this is one of the most unhinged moments that we see Alistair in. He's not really thinking about anything except hurting everyone he can in order to make himself feel a bit better. But of course, he's still got a hole in him at the end of the episode. As we see when those doors close, he's like, well, there's nothing left. He's clearly realizing that the situation that he's in, he's trapped. He's so distraught. I love the voice work that Maxwell Caulfield does throughout these 2 episodes. Well, whenever we see him as Smythe, actually, but I love how broken he sounds at the end of the episode when those doors close and he realizes that he's pretty much isolated and he's got to do what the Kingpin says, or that's it for him. He has this "what have I done" kind of moment, and he's alone. He's got nobody, and I cannot wait to get into more episodes featuring these two. I really like the Kingpin and Alistair in this show, especially when we get to season 3. It's very brutal what Kingpin does to Smythe. So next time, Menace of Mysterio, be here for that. I can't wait to get into Greg Berger's performance as Mysterio, one of my favorite incarnations of old Bubblehead, as he's called in this series. So till then, guys,